first Mother's Day celebration actually took place in a town called Grafton, West Virginia. I was thinking about that, and I doubt very seriously whether any of you all could find Grafton, West Virginia on the map, and I would be willing almost to wager that none of you have ever been there. But I have. So it's one of those little things that I read there. I thought, I've been there. I've even been to church there, preached in the church there once or twice. So it spread very quickly around the early part of the 1900s. First national celebration was in 1910. Woodrow Wilson dedicated Mother's Day, and it was on the second Sunday of May because that was the birthday of the mother of the lady who wanted to have this Mother's Day celebration. The interesting thing about it is that she had an idea of what she wanted Mother's Day to be. A time when you could recognize your mothers and could honor them and recognize their spiritual commitment and so forth. Yet, within 9 years of the first National Mother's Day, she was upset because it had become so commercialized. And so we look at all the holidays we have and the commercialization and so forth, which even 100 years ago it was the same way. That people were upset because it suddenly turned into a financial situation, a way to make money, and all the things associated with that. Well, we want to go back to the Bible and look at 3 model mothers and some of the things that they did that made them important. The first one is a woman with a model prayer. The picture that we have up there is a picture of Hannah and her son Samuel. Okay? I was just hoping somebody filled the blank there for me. So Hannah was in an interesting situation that we would find very foreign. Hannah was married to a man named Elkanah, and Elkanah had 2 wives. The one wife had children, and Hannah was the other wife, and she did not have any children. And in that culture, having children was something that was very important to the ladies. They wanted to have children. It was a sign of the blessing of God. It was a sign that God was watching over them, that they were obedient to God, and all the things you can add into that. And Hannah didn't have any children, and her fellow wife was very willing to share the fact whether that she had kids and Hannah didn't. And bewildered her and made her feel bad and made her feel inadequate. Eventually, Hannah's husband, who was a very religious man, and went to the place of worship of the children of Israel at this time, at the tabernacle, took Hannah with him. And she prayed to God at the tabernacle, asking God to give her a son. And she made a vow to God. She said, God, if you will give me a son, I will give him back to you and will dedicate him to you. In 1 Samuel, the first chapter, verses 10 and 11, we have Hannah's prayer. And it goes like this. In bitterness of her soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used upon his head. Explanation of that last part of that verse is just a second. And that is that during this time in the Jewish religion, that they had people that were called Nazarites, who were individuals who were dedicated to God. And one of the signs of knowing when a person was a Nazarite was that they didn't cut their hair. It was only males, and they didn't cut their hair. But what Hannah is saying is, I'll dedicate my son to God, and I'll see to it that he becomes a Nazarite, which was somebody who was dedicated and committed to God. And so Hannah gave her son to God. God blessed her. God gave her a son, and after he was weaned, the scripture tells us that Hannah took him to the tabernacle and gave him to the priest to raise. And she only saw him on a couple of special occasions during the year. Can you imagine a mother who wanted a child so badly that she gave him away to God? And she robbed herself of the opportunity to raise her son because she wanted to give him to God. I don't know how many of you ladies would fall in the category who want to do that. I see Linda sort of going, I don't know about this. You know, so I can understand how that would happen. Yet Hannah's faith in God showed her trust and obedience to God. She was willing to obey not only the will of God, but also her oath and her promise to God. How many people have promised to do something for God, when they got out of the mess, they forgot all about the promise? You know, we know folks like that. But Hannah didn't forget the promise that she made here. 1 Peter, the 5th chapter, verses 6 and 7, talks a little bit, and we can see Hannah in this verse, where it says, "Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." Hannah prayed, and she cast all her anxieties on God, or on him, because she knew he cared for her. And God answered Hannah's prayer. She was blessed by God. How was Hannah blessed? Well, first of all, she was blessed with a son. But she was not just blessed with a warm body of a son. She was blessed with a son that became one of the mighty men of Israel. Samuel became a man that led Israel for 40 years. He led them in their spiritual life. He led them in their military life. He won battles for God. He anointed Saul to be king of Israel. He anointed David to be king of Israel. Hannah's son was somebody special. Hannah prayed to God, asked God to give her a son. God answered her prayer and gave her an exceptional son that she could be proud of. The second woman that we're thinking about here is a widow with a model faith. Jesus makes reference to her in the book of Luke, the 4th chapter and 24th verse. Set the stage here for just a minute. Jesus had gone to Nazareth and was snubbed, might be the best word, by the people of Nazareth. They said, well, who's this Jesus? He's just the carpenter's son. We remember him when he was a kid. We don't really want to worry or think about him too much. I preached a sermon about this a couple of months ago. Well, in Luke, Jesus says this, in Luke the 4th chapter, 24 to 26. This is what he says. I tell you the truth, he, that's Jesus, continued, no prophet is accepted in his own town. Then he gives an Old Testament example that we want to look at. He says, I assure you that there were many widows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the skies were shut for 3.5 years, and there was a severe famine throughout the land. Ahab and Jezebel were the rulers of Israel. And God was punishing Ahab and Jezebel for their idolatry and for their sins. And he said, I'm going to shut up the rain clouds. There will be no rain. And Elijah told Ahab and Jezebel, it won't rain until I tell it to rain. Now, they weren't happy with that, and Elijah had to find a place to stay. And so Jesus is telling this story, and he said there were lots of widows' houses that Elijah could go to. But Elijah, verse number 26, yet Elijah was not sent to any of the widows of Israel, but to the widow in Zarephath in the region of Sidon. You look on the map today and find Tyre and Sidon up on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea in what is now Lebanon. And that's where Elijah ended up. Elijah was there for a couple of reasons, for safety, but also to go to a place where someone would accept him. In 1 Kings, the 17th chapter, verses 8 through 13, we have the story of what happened here.